Hey guys, if you're struggling to catch some of those deep, very pressured summertime bass, then I've got the perfect sneaky technique for you to try next chance you hit the water. So stick around, let's talk about it. There's one. Got it. Let's go. First fish of the morning, guys. Look how he ate that Ned. All right, guys, so I know the majority of you are familiar with the Ned Rig. Now, this is a really great lightweight finesse technique that I love in the wintertime, springtime, as those water temps start heating up. You know, these fish are pre-spawn, spawn, post-spawn, eating small baits, you know, bed fishing with this thing for smallmouth. Great application. But as we get into the summertime, you know, majority of us like to bulk up the size of our baits, you know, start chasing those bigger fish that are keying up on them bigger bait fish, bigger brim, you know, all that good stuff, right? Makes sense, right? And traditionally, all these weights on a Ned Rig are super weird, you know, very small. So this is a 1/8 ounce. I normally like a 1/8 or a 1/6 ounce in the X-Zone tungsten Ned head. And so like you saw, this is a very small presentation, something that I'm traditionally not gonna pick up in the summertime. But I was out here on Lake Guntersville fishing some ledges, had a big school of bass, and I had them located. They were set up perfect. You know, sometimes you can just see the way these fish are setting up whenever you side scan over them, and they just look like they're feeding, you know, like you have a good chance to catch them. And so I threw everything under the sun at them: crankbait, swim bait, jig, drop shot, Texas rig, and they just wouldn't eat anything. So I started thinking, I was like, so we got structure, we've got an offshore school of bass that's very pressured, and that's when I started thinking about the old Ned, or Magnum is what I like to call it. So I remember back in the wintertime, I purchased some of these heavier Ned heads, and this is a 3/8 made by X-Zone Lures. So 3/8 is gonna get down in there a lot quicker, hit the bottom. And what's cool about the Ned head is it's real similar to a shaky head. You know, it's gonna be like a stand-up head, and it's gonna stand up and have that tail of the worm or whatever you're throwing on the end just stick straight up in the air. And so you just want to pop it and give it a little, like a shimmy shake. That's the way I like to fish it. I just take my rod tip and barely shake it, reel up the slack, barely shake it, super slow, dragging, bouncing presentation. But, you know, typically, you see how small that hook is. Typically, I would not have a worm this big, but, you know, I put 2 and 2 together. I like throwing this. This is an MB Fat finesse worm. I like throwing it on a Texas rig in the summertime, you know, heavier Texas rig, 3/8, half ounce. And so I was like, I put 2 and 2 together. I was like, man, let's show them something different. You know, because there's probably not a ton of people fishing offshore with a Ned rig, because, you know, I had never done it until this year. It's not one of the baits I think about whenever I'm ledge fishing. Definitely not thinking about a Ned rig. So, and dude, I fired this thing in there. First several casts had bites, caught a couple good ones, and man, I was like, dude, this is sneaky. I might not need to share this with YouTube. But anyways, the worm of choice on this, like I said, is the X-Zone Lures MB Fat Finesse worm. You will miss some fish because you see how long that worm is compared to, you know, where the hook is on the body of the worm. So you've got all this area for a fish to bite, and if he does not like engulf the bait, he'll probably miss it. But guys, let me take this worm off and I'll show you more of this bait. And I was struggling finding Ned heads back in the springtime. I couldn't find one that had a sturdy enough hook, because I was fishing one, I can't remember what brand it was, but a couple years in a BFL, I was throwing one, and it's very light wire hook, and I jumped off a 5.5 pound, at least 5.5 pound smallmouth in a BFL. Cost me a check, and gave me a good little heartbreak, because that was a big old smallmouth, like first fish, first thing in the morning. So the X-Zone tungsten Ned head has by far been one of the best Ned heads that I've ever fished, and they've got the perfect sizes. But for this summertime presentation, 3/8 is really the best. But I like this little bait keeper on it. Really keeps your baits on there and keeps them from ripping off, having to use a whole bunch of plastics throughout the day. But yeah, that's that. So you saw the MB Fat Finesse worm. Let's talk about some more baits that we could put on it. The X-Zone Deception worm, you know, any traditional trick worm style bait, you know, of course. The 5-inch center stick, it looks very similar to, you know, like the Ned Zone bait or any typical traditional Ned bait, 2 to 3 inch bait, except larger. And what I've done, you know, when I run out of these Ned baits in the spring and winter time, I'll just take my scissors and cut these things in half, and it works, you know, just like a normal Ned bait would. And then there's the 3-inch Ned Zone. This is my go-to for, you know, the lighter applications in the spring and winter, but it'd also probably be good in the summertime. Just like I said, I like to bulk up the size of my worms, so I'm more than likely not gonna throw that one, but it's definitely an option. And then one that I was messing with this morning is actually, you know, the fluke style bait, but this is a Whiplash shad by Exxon. So any traditional fluke style bait, I mean, I honestly haven't tried this, so I could just be blowing smoke up your tail, but you know, I was thinking about it paired up on the Ned head. And dude, this could be something deadly, because here in the past I've fished a fluke on a wobble head, which is definitely a dragging, slower presentation that majority of people don't see. And I actually need to do a video on that, but you know, just something different. That's what you're wanting to do, showing these schools of bass something different. So especially if they're feeding up on bait fish, you know, fluke style bait dragging along the bottom, bouncing along the bottom, could be something very deadly, something very sneaky. So let's talk about our gear. Typically, anytime you would hear a Ned Rig, or me that I would think about fishing a Ned Rig, I would definitely have it on a spinning rod. But this 3/8 ounce is a lot bigger, so you know, you're gonna want to jump up to a bait caster. At least me, if I can get away throwing a casting rod, I'm definitely gonna do it, just because I like to have, you know, that extra backbone, that extra weight in the rod to really get that hook penetration on my hook sets and just fighting the fish. You know, I have a lot more confidence with a casting rod than a spinning rod. But anyways, guys, this is the same setup that I like for my Texas rigs. This is a 7-foot medium heavy Duckett Jacob Wheeler Series 2.0. I've got a 7 1-to-1 gear ratio loose reel. You know, when you're choosing your reel speed, you want to have anywhere from like that, I would say that 6/8 to 7 1-to-1 gear ratio. You don't want to have a super fast reel, but you also don't want to have a super slow reel, because you know, if a fish picks up your bait on the bottom and swims off, you want to be able to pick up that slack and get that good hook set and keep that tight line whenever you're fighting that fish back in. But yeah, the 6/8 to 7/1 is going to really allow you to either really slow it down, since it's a finesse presentation, or speed it up if you need to, you know, getting the bait in and stuff. But so 7 1-to-1's my go-to. And then I like 15-pound Berkeley Trilane 100% fluorocarbon. I think really anywhere from that 12 to 17 pound test, you'd be all right. 12 pounds pushing a little bit, that's a little light in my opinion, especially because I really like to set the hook hard on these offshore fish in deeper water, throwing a single hook. So, but guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have ever fished the Magnum Ned or have heard about it, let me know down in the comments. And it might not be as sneaky as I thought it was, but you know, it was something that I started trying. Seen success very quickly with it, so I was like, you know, I'll share it with you guys, because it can definitely make a difference out there on the water and you catching some fish. Because if I wouldn't have picked it up, I would have went without catching several of those fish. They ended up eating a drop shot a little bit later on, but the old Magnum Ned was definitely what they wanted. But guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you learned something. Guys, make sure to smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, get us to 4,000. We're almost there. My end goal for the end of 2025 is to be at 5,000. So you guys help me out, help me to reach that mark. But guys, I want to thank you again for watching. We'll see you in the next one.